So the mayor's office of new urban mechanics is Boston's Civic Innovation Incubator and R&D lab. We have been working with Code for America since its very beginning, over those 4 years. And today we want to share 2 stories with you and then talk a little bit about what we've learned over the past 4 years about how to be successful about this stuff, both from the perspective of how cities effectively engage with Code for America, but also how we maximize the results for our residents, which is ultimately the point of doing this work. And so we're going to first hear about Discover BPS from Joel Mahoney, and then Michael Evans will talk about some of our projects around civic making.
Thanks, Nigel. Hi, everyone. So I'm one of the people who signed up to work on stuff that matters. And I'm here today to tell you about a project that started during my fellowship in 2011, and that I've continued to work on with the City of Boston and Boston Public Schools. So there are 59,000 students in Boston enrolled in 135 public schools. Those schools vary in capacity, in performance, and also in applicant demand. And I'd like you to consider the challenge of crafting a school assignment policy that takes all of these variables into account and still guarantees every child access to a quality education. That turns out to be a challenging proposition. And the policy that does that in Boston is complex. And the complexity shows up in places like the parent handbook that you see here, which is meant to guide parents through this process, but which many parents feel is a really complicated, confusing, dense document, frustrating process. So much so that during our fellowship, the Boston Globe ran this special report on, they called it Inside the Student Assignment Maze, and it had these profiles of parents. And so we saw this, and we felt like there had to be a better way. We had to be able to help parents through this process. And we built this tool called Discover BPS that lets parents enter a home address and grade level and see their eligible schools on a map. So instead of expecting them to parse this complicated logic in their heads and figure out what it means for their children, we do that in the software so that they can look on the map and see where their children can go to school. The project launched in November 2011, and what's really interesting to me is what's happened since then. So in his 2012 State of the City address, Mayor Menino committed to tackling this problem once and for all. That led a year later to the selection of a new student assignment policy called the Home-Based Plan that generates a personalized list of schools for every student in the city. So the old plan generated a list of schools per grade level across each of the 3 zones in the school district. The new plan does that basically for every address, for every student. And the goal here is to make sure that they really are guaranteeing every child equal access to quality education. But this math is hard, and no longer can the school department do this calculation on paper. This happens now on a computer, algorithmically. And it's really interesting to me to think about, Code for America's role as kind of a change agent in city halls, and showing what's possible, introducing cities to new technology, and to see this sequence of events in Boston. I mean, this is a decades-long process, but it's really interesting to see the role that we might have played here. I'm also really excited today to announce the launch of version 2 of Discover BPS. We're going live in Boston November 1st with a billboard campaign throughout the city. I'm really excited about that. It just shows the school department has really embraced this project. You can learn more at schoolselection.org. And I would just like to thank Nigel and Chris, who have been terrific partners, and also Objective Subject, the New York design firm that I've been working with. Thank you.
Okay. So, weddings. They happen at City Hall. Settle down. You're making me nervous. And in Boston, we've been documenting and sharing these moments with the help of a makeshift photo booth. It's the inspiration of the man we work for, Mayor Menino, the original urban mechanic, a man who has shaken the hand of 60% of the city. And he'll be leaving office in 83 days. And in a retrospective, the Boston Globe wrote something that really resonated with me. they said that he was an uncommonly intimate figure in a time when American cities have become anything but. And this mindset has influenced how we engage with people outside of City Hall, like an event called Girls Make the City, the city's first maker event, focused on introducing 12 to 14-year-old girls to hands-on civic making and pairing them with role models in science and technology. And also City Hall to Go, a revamped bomb squad truck modeled after a food truck that brings City Hall to your block. And you should check out the menu. It's awesome. That's my favorite menu ever. So a few months after City Hall to Go was introduced, we had an idea. Let's put design and fabrication tools on the truck to help us collaborate with residents and reimagine parts of the city. Last month, we did that in East Boston with an event called Makers and Movers to design a bike hub as part of the redevelopment of Central Square. The hub includes a bike repair station in a neighborhood that has no bike repair shops, but is trying to support a budding group of bicyclists. And we did it with the support of Bloomberg Philanthropies, the Awesome Foundation, the Media Lab at MIT, and a partnership with the Boston Transportation Department. So we loaded up the truck with a 3D printer, vinyl cutter, computers, and sign stock, and took it to East Boston. People of all ages sketched new bike hub icons, designed the hub with the help of Legos and a 3D printer, and implemented bike signs with a vinyl cutter. And I just want to go back for a second. Whoops. This is actually going forward. OK. Sorry. OK, so Legos for civic engagement. And I'm not kidding on that. My partner, Mariko Davidson, had this idea to borrow a ton of Legos from the MIT Media Lab, which is using Lego modeling for city planning. We thought they might get ignored, but they turned out to be a big hit. They're just immediately accessible. Everyone knows how to use them. Some kids went home, got their own Legos, took them back to the event. They're just a perfect tool for people of all ages to collaborate on design problems in the streetscape. Okay. So now that we have the designs, we're working with the Boston Transportation Department to implement the hub, which was designed in part by neighborhood residents. And that's the important part. This is beyond feedback. This is actual implementation. This is what New Urban Mechanics does. And the use of maker tools is also making its way into new community outreach policies in the city's Complete Streets Guidelines, which is the official how-to book on streetscape development in Boston. We're proud that this led to policy that bolsters the notion of intimate, connected cities. And we can't do this without partnerships. In some cases, the line between the public and the public sector is blurring. Something that comes out of the approach of New Urban Mechanics, an approach that cultivates deep relationships within City Hall and with universities, community organizations, and entrepreneurs, which ultimately expands the reach of an office of 5 people with limited resources.
Great. Thanks, Mevins. So newer mechanics is really an approach that is about establishing a sustainable culture of innovation inside local government. And what we've discovered is that in order to be able to do that, you first, or in parallel, have to create a culture of learning in which you're creating feedback loops in which you're able to introspect about what you're doing so that you can understand, so that we can understand what works, what doesn't work, and so on. And so for us, the projects that we engage in many ways, are our best teachers. And so we want to share some of these learnings with you now. So this is the most important one, right? And it's come up before. Clay was talking about this. Be relevant. Discover BPS came out of us listening to Boston school parents and around what their interests were. And their interests were change the school system, give us better tools and mechanisms to affect change and to understand the way the system works. So when we rolled out Discover BPS, it was in direct response to that line of questioning from parents. And it was designed to give high-value, near-term, specific value to Boston's residents, to Boston's parents. And I mean, it's only by committing, what we've discovered is only by committing to that engagement, to actually be listening actively to our residents, that we're able to chart our own future. So as innovation teams, this is critical. When I talk to my colleagues in other cities, there's often a question of, like, what do we do first? So our response to that is listen and then do. So collaborate deeply. The problems that we want to take on in the civic innovation movement are hard. Unfortunately, we tend to have a fairly simplistic notion as to where innovation comes from. There's often this sense that you just throw some data over the wall and magical things will happen. Unless we in government, or we in a local government, in city halls across this country, are willing to, and those of us that know the problem space really well, are willing to share what we know, to share the insights with the people that are outside of city government and across, everywhere, that are trying to solve these issues, we will never get beyond the point where we are now, where it is incredibly hard for innovators outside of government to actually work with us. So we really need to roll up our sleeves and get invested and involved in these projects. So grow your network. I spent a lot of time talking to my colleagues, our colleagues in other cities, and one of the things that comes up again and again around this idea, when the topic of what resources do we have to work with around solving these hard issues, there's always this discussion about your budget and then your municipal employees. But that's crazy, because when you think about it, the resources that you have in your city are your city. The city hall is not the same as the city. And so we are very interested in trying to encourage more of that direct collaboration and enabling innovators outside of government to work with city innovators. One of the things, and obviously the CfA Fellows are an excellent way to grow that network, to grow the tendrils of your network into the parts of your community which you may not have a lot of connectivity to. I wanted to say a quick aside here about Joel and Mevins. Those of you that are current Code for America cities, you're going to spend the next year getting to know your fellows, and then the question of what happens after that year is going to loom large. I encourage you, in fact, I implore you, to be as creative as you can to figure out ways that you can continue to work with the fellows after that first year. That is the only reason that we've been able to do this work. It's because we've kept this incredible relationship with Joel so that he's been able to learn about what we're interested in and vice versa. And it was the reason that we were able to hire Mevins and then Nick, although he's leaving now. So be creative about that stuff. So the next one is to be present. I think a lot of the civic innovation movement that we're all a part of has focused on building better digital tools for residents. And I think part of the intent behind that is really to focus on rebuilding, or in some cases building, greater trust between residents and government, and honestly in the other direction as well. But we have to remember that in many ways, the easiest way for us as local government officials to build trust is to be present. Go where your residents are. So if you're the leader of your web team, get out of City Hall. Go and do focus groups with your users. Connect with the people that are using the products that you produce and engage them in a dialogue about what the future of your website should be. Or if you're in the GIS team, go to a community meeting. Get out of City Hall. Go to a community meeting and talk to the residents there about how they can be better using GIS technology and maps as a way of advocating on their own behalf in their communities. Whoa. So grow your street cred. So Americans, U.S. cities are crumbling. That's no secret. And the techniques that we have and the ways of thinking about what we do about this are rapidly running out of gas. But those of us here in the civic innovation space, I think there's a lot that we can be doing to be taking on these classic issues of urban infrastructure, how to maintain it, how to upgrade it, and so on. Whether it's deploying smartphone apps that enable your, on the high-tech side, enable your residents to become citizen sensors or citizen scientists, or on the low-tech side, like the stuff that Mevins was talking about, in which you engage with the community around around something as prosaic and as straightforward as building new kinds of signs so that improve the legibility of your city and improve wayfinding and ultimately make your city more human readable. So this last one may or may not be controversial to you, kind of depends on your perspective. Obviously, data is a key element in our toolkit in terms of kind of developing innovative solutions to the problems that we face. But it's far from the only tool in our toolkits. Sorry, I lost my place there. There's a whole range of things that we can do around engaging the public in which we're directly connecting with people. To give you an example, Discover BPS is a very data-driven solution. It takes us in a direction of thinking about how data can be used to encourage system change in big urban systems like the education system. But on the other hand, there's also ways of thinking about this that come out of like Mevans' work, in which we're looking at like non-technology ways in many cases, and it reminds us that bringing change and innovation to City Hall can be as simple and straightforward as setting up a makeshift photo booth and taking pictures of newlyweds and then posting them to a Tumblr site. Because what this reminds us of is that government fundamentally is about people helping people. It's about the public sector partnering with the public. And this, in turn, will, I think, enable the public, the residents, the people whose trust we're supposed to be getting at, how they feel and think about local government. And from my perspective, that's really what this movement is about. Thanks very much.